imagine a company believes its systems are safe because the scanner shows only a few warnings, but one unpatched weakness can still become a starting point of a real breach. Verizon's 2025 data breach investigations report says that vulnerability exploitation as an initial access method reached 20% of breaches and grew by 34%, showing how serious known weaknesses have become in real attacks. So this is where Metasploit becomes important. Metasploit is a penetration testing framework, or simply a structured security testing toolbox used by ethical hackers to check whether a vulnerability is actually dangerous in a legal and controlled environment. Rapid7 describes Metasploit as a modular platform used to write, test, and execute exploit code, but for beginners, it is easier to understand it as a tool that helps security systems validate risks before attackers misuse them. So this is why this topic is so important. It teaches how professionals identify weak points, prove their impact safely, and help organizations fix security gaps before they turn into real accidents. So now that we understand why Metasploit matters in real world, let's look at what we will be covering in this tutorial, from basic concepts to the hands-on demo. What is Metasploit? We will be understanding what Metasploit means, what it is used for, and why ethical hackers rely on it for security testing. Then we have why ethical hackers use Metasploit. So we will see how Metasploit helps security teams validate risks instead of just depending on scanner warnings. Then we have key Metasploit terms. We will be breaking down simple terms like modules, exploits, payloads, options, and even sessions in a beginner-friendly way. Penetration testing workflow. We will understand how professional testing works, starting from permission and scope to validation and reporting. Safe lab setup. We will be setting up a controlled practice environment using Kali Linux and Metasploitable 2 without touching any real system. Understanding MSF console. Here we will explore the main Metasploit console and learn how commands like search, use, info, show options, set, and run work. Scanner module demo. Then we will use safe scanner modules to check services like FTP and SSH inside the lab. Controlled vulnerability validation demo. Then we will run a beginner-friendly lab validation using Metasploitable 2 vulnerability. Cleanup and reporting. We will close active sessions, clean up the test environment, and create a simple report in VS Code. Key takeaways. Then we will quickly revise the main points and understand how Metasploit should be used responsibly in cybersecurity learning. So before we move on, let me share something really exciting with you guys. If you're serious about building a strong cybersecurity career, this is where structured learning can really help. So the CISSP certification, which is Certified Information Systems Security Professional Training, in partnership with Simplilearn, is designed for learners and professionals who want to move beyond basic security knowledge and understand how real organizations design, manage, and protect their systems. So this program covers important areas like security and risk management, asset security, security architecture, network security, identify and access management, security testing, security operations, and secure software development. So what makes it useful is that it doesn't just focus on theory, it also helps you understand real-world security responsibilities, decision-making, risk handling, and how security leaders think. So whether you're already working in IT, planning to move into cybersecurity, or aiming for roles like security analyst, security manager, security architect, or security consultants, this course can help you build the kind of knowledge that companies are really looking for. So this training also highlights expert-led learning, interactive sessions, simulation tests, sample papers, and coverage of 8 essential CISSP domains, making it a strong choice for anyone who wants to grow seriously in cybersecurity. So before we jump deeper into Metasploit, here's a quick quiz question to test your basics. What is Metasploit mainly used for? Is it A, editing videos, B, testing security, C, designing websites, or is it D, sending emails? Let us know your answers in the comments below. So Metasploit is a penetration testing framework used by security professionals to test whether a weakness in a system can actually be used by an attacker. So in simple words, it can help ethical hackers check if a vulnerability is only a warning on paper or a real risk in practice. So Rapid7 describes Metasploit Framework as a Ruby-based modular platform used to write, test, and execute code. But for beginners, think of Metasploit as a security testing toolbox. So inside this toolbox, there are different modules for scanning, checking, testing, and validating. So now that we understand what Metasploit is, let's move on to why ethical hackers use it. So ethical hackers use Metasploit because it gives them a structured way to test security issues. So instead of guessing whether a system is risky, they can validate the weakness inside an approved test environment. So this helps companies fix problems before real attackers find them. The goal is not to hack randomly. The goal here is to protect systems, reduce risk, and give clear proof to the security team. So this matters because IBM's 2025 cost of data breach report says that a global average cost of data breach is $4.4 million. So now that we are clear about why ethical hackers use Metasploit, we shall now dive into the basic terms used inside the tool. So before using Metasploit, we need to understand a few simple terms. An exploit is a method used to take advantage of weakness. A payload is what runs after the exploit works. An auxiliary module is used for tasks like scanning or checking. A post module is used after access is gained in an authorized test. And Rapid7 explains that a module is a piece of software Metasploit uses to perform a task such as exploiting or scanning a target. So remember this simple idea. The module is not a tool. The exploit uses the weakness and the payload decides what happens next. So now that the key terms are clearer, let's move on to the complete testing workflow. So professional penetration test does not start with running tools. So it starts with permission, scope, and planning. The tester must know which systems are allowed, which systems are not allowed, and which kind of testing is approved. So the normal workflow is simple. Understand the scope, collect information, identify services, check vulnerabilities, validate risk, document results, clean up, and submit a report. So this is what separates an ethical hacker from an attacker. A real security professional doesn't just run commands. They test carefully, explain clearly, and help the organization improve. So now that we know the workflow, let's understand how we will be creating a safe lab. So for learning Metasploit, we should never test random systems. We will use a control lab. So the attacker is a machine which can be Kali Linux, and the vulnerable target can be Metasploitable 2. So Rapid7 describes Metasploitable 2 as an intentionally vulnerable Ubuntu virtual machine made for security testing. So this is useful because learners can practice safely without harming real systems. The lab will run inside VirtualBox or VMware, and both machines will stay inside a private virtual network. So now that our lab idea is clear, let's understand the main interference used in Metasploit. So the main interference of a Metasploit is called MSF console. So this is where we search for modules, select a module, check required options, set the approved lab target, run a safe test, and understand the result. So for beginners, MSF console may look difficult because it's terminal-based, but the flow is really simple. Here you search, select, configure, test, observe, and report. So the important thing is not memorizing commands. The important thing is understanding what each step means and why it's being done. So now that we understand the MSF console, let's connect everything with the hands-on demo flow. So Metasploit is not just a hacking tool, it's a professional framework for authorized security testing. And this helps ethical hackers check whether a vulnerability is actually dangerous or not. In this tutorial, we learned what Metasploit is, why ethical hackers use it, and key terms like exploit, payload, and module, how penetration testing works, how to create a safe lab, and how MSF console is used, and why reporting matters. So the biggest lesson here is simple. Tools do not make someone professional. Responsible usage, permission, documentation, and clear communication does. Welcome to the practical demo of this Metasploit tutorial. In this hands-on part, we're going to use Metasploit inside a safe local lab. So this means we will not test any real website, a public IP address, company systems, or unknown network. Everything that we will do will stay inside our own virtual lab. So for this demo, we will be using Kali Linux as a testing machine and Metasploitable as an intentionally vulnerable practice machine. So Kali Linux will help us run Metasploit, and Metasploitable 2 will act as a safe target created only for learning. So the tools we need are VirtualBox or VMware, Kali Linux, Metasploitable 2, and VS Code. So VS Code will help us keep our commands and report nodes organized. So we will begin by updating Kali Linux and make sure that Metasploit is available. So let me go ahead and type sudo apt update. So this command updates the list of available packages inside Kali Linux. So it does not install anything yet, but it only makes sure that Kali Linux knows about the latest available software packages. So now let's go ahead and install Metasploit. So that's sudo apt install Metasploit. So this command installs the Metasploit framework if it's not already installed. So the Y here means yes, so the installation continues without asking for your confirmation again and again. So this particular command installs the open source version of VS Code on Kali Linux. So here we will use it to write nodes and maintain simple reports during the demo. So now that the basic tools are ready, we shall start the database service used by Metasploit. So this particular command starts PostgreSQL. Metasploit uses the database to store information like discovered hosts, services, and scan results. So this particular command makes PostgreSQL start automatically when Kali Linux starts. So this is useful because Metasploit often needs a database in future sessions. Now this particular command initializes the Metasploit database, and in simple words, it prepares the database so Metasploit can actually save and manage test information properly. So now if you go ahead and type MSF console followed by dash and Q, MSF console. So this command opens Metasploit. So the Q here means quiet mode, so it opens without a large banner. So now that Metasploit is open, we will check whether it's connected to the database. Let's go ahead and type db_status. So if the output says the database is connected, it means that Metasploit is ready to store information from our lab testing. So now that the setup is complete, let's move on and understand what Metasploit looks like from the inside. So now that Metasploit is open, let's understand it practically. Metasploit is a security testing framework, and a framework means it can give us a structured way to perform testing instead of using random commands. So inside Metasploit, we will work with modules. So a module is like a ready-made testing component where some modules check services, some modules scan systems, and some modules validate known weaknesses. So if we want to see the available basic commands inside Metasploit, we will go ahead and type help. So let me go ahead and type help. So the help command shows us that the main commands available inside Metasploit. For a beginner-friendly demo, the most important commands are search, use, info, show options, set, run, check, back, sessions, and exit. You can also see database backend commands, resource script commands, job commands. You have several commands that you can use. So the version command tells us which version of Metasploit is running. So this is very useful because tools are updated over time, and the version information helps us understand the environment that we are working in currently. So now we will look at how show command works. So let's go ahead and type show-h. So the show command is used to display useful information inside Metasploit. So it can show options, payloads, targets, modules, and many other details depending on what we're working on. So now that we understand what Metasploit is and how the console looks, let's move on to why ethical hackers use it. So since we have already seen Metasploit from inside, let's go ahead and understand why ethical hackers use it. So in real security testing, a tool may say that a system has vulnerability, but the security team needs to know whether the vulnerability is actually risky in their environment. So Metasploit helps with this validation. It allows security professionals to test known weaknesses in an organized and approved way. So the purpose is not to attack systems. The purpose here is to help organizations find problems before real attackers do. So for this part, we will search for scanner modules. So scanner modules are useful because they help us collect information about services in a control lab. So let's go ahead and type search followed by auxiliary scanner. So type auxiliary means that we are looking for support modules usually used for scanning, checking, or gathering information. So the word scanner here filters the result in scanning related modules. So now we will search for FTP scanner modules. Now let's go ahead and search for FTP scanner modules. So let's go ahead and type search FTP scanner. Search FTP scanner. Yeah. So FTP here stands for File Transfer Protocol. So it's used to transfer files between systems. And in real environments, old or misfigured FTP services, these can become a security risk. So ethical hackers can check such services only when they have permission. So now that we are clear about why ethical hackers use Metasploit, let's move on to the most important terms that we need for this demo. So now that we have searched for modules, let us understand the main terms used inside Metasploit. So the first term is module. A module is a ready-made component inside Metasploit. The second term is exploit. An exploit is used to take advantage of a known weakness. The third term is payload. A payload is what runs after an exploit succeeds. The fourth term is options. Options are the values a module needs before it can run. So now we will select a safe scanner module. So for this, we will run the following command. So that's use safe scanner. So this particular command selects the FTP version scanner module. So this module checks the version of the FTP service running on the target machine. Now let's go ahead and view information about this module. So for that, let's go ahead and type info. So it's asking us to type info D instead of just info. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah. So this info command gives us the details about the selected module. So it tells us what the module does, what it's used for, and what kind of information it needs. Now let's go ahead and check the required options. So for that, let's go ahead and type show options. Yeah. So the show options command displays the settings needed by the selected module. So one important option here is ROSTs. ROSTs here means remote hosts and the target machine that we want to be testing. Another option is report. So this means a remote port or a service port used by the target. So if we want to come out of this module, you just have to type back. Okay. So the back command returns us to the main Metasploit prompt. Let's move on to the correct testing workflow. So now that we have understood the basic terms, we shall follow a proper testing workflow. A professional test does not begin randomly. It begins with permission, scope, and a safe environment. So in our demo, the scope is very clear. We're only testing our Metasploitable 2 machine inside our own virtual lab. So we're not testing this anywhere outside the lab. For that reason, we will first check the IP address of our Kali Linux machine. So let's go ahead and type ADDR. Sorry, this is IP followed by ADDR. Yeah. So this particular command shows network details for Kali Linux. So this helps us understand which IP address Kali is using and which network it is connected to. Now let's go ahead and check the network route. So for that, you go ahead and type IP root. Yeah. So this command shows how Kali is connected to the network. If Kali and Metasploitable 2 are in the same virtual network, they should be able to communicate with each other. So now let's go ahead and discover active machines in the lab network. So for that, I'll go ahead and type nmap-sn followed by, So this particular command checks which machines are active in the local lab network. The SN option here means that this is only a host discovery scan. So it checks whether the machines are alive, but it doesn't really perform a deep service scan. So this stores the Metasploitable 2 IP address in a variable called target IP. So if we go ahead and type echo followed by $target, so this particular command prints the value stored inside the variable. So this helps us confirm that the target IP has been saved correctly. So now that we understand the basic workflow, let's move into the safe lab setup. So as you all have the workflow clear, let's now confirm the safe lab setup. The lab here has two machines. Kali Linux is a testing machine and Metasploitable 2 is a vulnerable practice machine. Both machines should run inside the same virtual network. A host-only adapter or an NAT network is preferred for this type of practice because it keeps the demo inside a control environment. So now we will go ahead and check the IP address of the vulnerable lab machine from inside the Metasploitable 2. For that, I'll go ahead and type ifconfig. So this command shows us the network details of Metasploitable 2. So the IP address shown here will be used as the target IP in Kali Linux. So now we will return to Kali Linux and check if Kali can reach Metasploitable 2. For that, I'll type ping-c followed by this number. The ping here checks whether Kali can communicate with the other target machine. The C here means that it can send back 4 test packets. So if replies come back, both machines are connected inside the lab network. Now we will perform a basic service detection scan on the lab target. So for doing that, we will go ahead and type nmap followed by -sv followed by this particular number. So the SV option here asks nmap to detect service versions. Service version information is useful because older services may have known vulnerabilities. So now that the safe lab is ready and the target machine is reachable, let's move on to the main Metasploit console. So now that the lab machines can communicate, let's open Metasploit again. So let's go ahead and type msf console. So we're already inside msf console. Now we will check the database connection again. So let's go ahead and type database_status for the same. So this confirms whether Metasploit is connected to its database or not. Now we will search for the FTP version scanner. So for this, you'll have to type search FTP followed by scanner. So this searches for a module that can check the FTP service version. So now we will select the FTP version scanner module. So for that, we will use the use auxiliary-scanner. So this particular command loads the selected modules inside the console. So now let's go ahead and check the module options. So for that, we will go ahead and type show options. So this shows us what values the module needs before it can run. So now we will set the target host. So we'll go ahead and type set rhosts followed by the number. So here, ROST is set to the IP address of our Metasploitable 2 lab machine. So now we will go ahead and run the module. So this module checks the FTP service version running on the lab target. So this helps us understand what service is available and what version is being used. So now let's move back and try an SSH version scanner. So let's move back. So this exits the current module and it returns to the main Metasploit prompt. So next, let's go ahead and search for an SSH module. Let's discover the version. So this searches for a module that can actually check the SSH service version. So now let's move ahead and use auxiliary, scanner and SSH followed by SSH version. So this particular command selects the SSH version scanner module. So now if you want to see the options, let's go ahead and type show options. So this displays the settings required by the SSH scanner module. Now let me go ahead and show you something. So if we type set, so on typing this particular command, it sets the Metasploitable 2 lab machine as the target. So now let's go ahead and run this. So run. So this checks the SSH version running on the target. Service version detection is a normal part of security testing because it helps testers understand what software is exposed. So now that we understand how to use scanner modules in MSF console, let's move on to a controlled hands-on validation inside the lab. So now that we understand the console, let's perform a complete beginner-friendly demo. Now we will identify the target services, then search for a known lab vulnerability and then check the module, Finally, we will validate the issue only inside our safe lab. So first, we will run a service scan inside Kali Linux. So for that, we will go ahead and type nmap. So this particular scan shows the services and versions running inside Metasploitable 2. So one of the services in this lab is VSF TPD, which is intentionally vulnerable in the Metasploitable 2 for learning purposes. So now we will open Metasploit. So first, let's go back. So now that we're inside the MSF console, we will go ahead and search for the modules related to VSF TPD. Search for VSF TPD. So this particular search helps us find the Metasploit modules related to the VSF TPD service. So now we will go ahead and select the lab module. So it's backdoor. So this module is used in many beginner labs because Metasploitable 2 includes an intentionally vulnerable version of this service. So now we will read the module information. So let's go ahead and type info. So the info command shows details about the module. It helps us understand what the module is used for before we run anything. Now let's go ahead and check the required options. For that, we will go ahead and type show options. So this shows the values needed by the module. The most important value here is ROST, which tells Metasploit the target machine. Now we will set the lab target. For this, we will use an SSH-based lab validation instead. In this demo, we are not guessing any passwords or testing any real systems. We are using the default practice credentials of Metasploitable 2 inside our own safe lab to understand why weak or default credentials are a serious security risk. So for this, we will go ahead and type back. So this brings us out of the previous FTP module and returns us to the main Metasploit prompt. Now let's go ahead and search the SSH login. So this particular command searches for Metasploit modules related to SSH login testing. So now let's go ahead and again use auxiliary. So this particular command selects the SSH login scanner module. Now let's go ahead and look at the options. So show options. So this shows us the values this module needs before it can run. So on running this particular command, it sets the Metasploitable 2 as the target machine inside our local lab. So if you type set username MSF admin, this sets the lab username. Set password MSF admin, this particular command sets the lab password. So if you set stop on success as true, it tells Metasploit to stop once it finds a successful login. So if you set verbose as false, it keeps the output cleaner and easier to understand. So now that all this is done, let's go ahead and run this. So this runs the SSH login validation against the lab target. So if the login is successful, Metasploit may open a session. So if you want to take a look at the active sessions, let's go ahead and type sessions. So this shows us the active sessions created during the lab validation. So if you go ahead and type sessions-i space 1. So if you type who am I, this shows which user is active in the session. So if you want to see the host, you can just type host name and it shows us the name of the target machine. If you type uname-a, so now we have completed the same idea in a more reliable way. So instead of using the FTP module that timed out, we used an SSH login validation to show how default credentials can become a real security risk when they are left unchanged. So the pwd command here shows the current working directory. So these commands are only used to confirm the lab validation if it worked or not. So we are not changing files, deleting data, stealing information, or damaging the machine. So if you want to exit, you can use the exit command, which is exit. So now let's return to the previous Metasploit level if needed. So I'll go ahead and type back. So now that the control lab validation is complete, let's move on to the cleanup and reporting part. So the cleanup part is really important. A professional tester should be able to leave sessions open in the background. So first we will check for active sessions. So if you go ahead and type sessions, you can see that there are no active sessions. So it shows us whether any sessions are active or not. Now we will close all of the active sessions. For this, you will have to go ahead and type sessions followed by, so this will go ahead and kill all of the active sessions. Now let's go ahead and remove any global target setting which was used. So for that, you will have to go ahead and type unset g rosts. So this helps avoiding using the same target accidentally in another module later. Now let's go ahead and exit Metasploit. So let's exit. So now let's go ahead and create a simple report folder. For that, let's go ahead and make a directory Metasploit report. So this creates a new folder for the demo report. Now let's go ahead and open this. So that's cd followed by the name of the report. So this particular command moves into the report folder. So now if you want to open it, you just use the touch command followed by notes and md. So this creates a markdown file for notes. So since I'm opening this in Notepad, just go ahead and type notepad.exe followed by notes.md. So this opens the notes files in VS Code. So as you can see, the report content will look like this. So use regular vulnerability scanning, apply security patches on time, and this report will be simple. It also follows an important habit. A security test should always end with a documentation. The report should clearly mention the setup, the targets, services checked, modules used, results, and recommendations. So now that the cleanup and reporting part are complete, let's move on to the key takeaways from the demo. The most important point is this: Metasploit is powerful, but the real skill is not just running commands. The real skill is understanding the workflow, using the tools responsibly, testing only with permission, cleaning up properly, and reporting findings clearly. And that brings us to the end of this Metasploit tutorial. So we learned what Metasploit is, why ethical hackers use it, how it fits into security testing, and how it can be practiced safely inside a control lab. So the most important thing here is to remember that tools like Metasploit are powerful, but they should always be used responsibly, legally, and only with the proper permission. So keep learning, keep practicing in safe environments, and keep building your cybersecurity skills step by step. Follow Simplilearn for more insights and check out our related videos.